Contrast for me, Jon, the success rate of entrepreneurs versus franchise entrepreneurs.
Yeah, the data would show that, large data that after 5 years, 92% of franchises are still in business, whereas, probably a third or less of startups are. Some of the things they like about business ownership, and especially through franchising, is you can build up that cash flow. You can build up an asset that's going to have exit value down the road, which we can certainly talk about, that piece. But you're also building a business where you get some tax write-offs that you don't as a W-2 employee. It's setting up generational wealth and, just a lot of things that you can't do as a W-2 employee.
What's up, After Hours Entrepreneur? Welcome back to the show. Mark here, and I got a special guest here for you today, Jon Ostenson. Jon is the founder of FranBridge Consulting.com, FranBridgeConsulting.com. And what he does is he helps find people just like you and matches them up with the perfect franchise opportunity. So what he does is take people that are thinking about starting a business, not exactly sure where to start, and sees if franchising is the right way to go. Super interesting conversation that we have here today, including why franchise owners are 92% successful. That means 92 out of 100 franchises that start stay alive and stay thriving. Super interesting. Lots of big profitability options here too. So I think you're going to enjoy today's episode. If you ever thought about whether franchising is a good step, I think this episode is going to be super compelling. Thanks for listening to today's episode. All right, cool. Let's get into the episode and start talking about franchising and whether it's the right fit for you and your family. DJ, on the tape, bro. Let's go. Quick shout out to our sponsors over at FranBridge Consulting. They specialize in placing you with the best non-food franchises on earth. And the best part, it's 100% free. Do yourself a favor and sign up for a free call with the CEO, Jon Ostenson, today over at FranBridgeConsulting.com. He'll even send you a free book, 100% free. Go to FranBridgeConsulting.com, chat with the CEO, Jon, today. All right, let's get into the episode. Jon, what is up? Welcome to After Hours Entrepreneur. What's happening?
Mark, excited to be here. Looking forward to our conversation. Love the show. So let's get going.
Much love. Yeah, let's get right into it. We're talking franchising today and whether it might be the right fit for your future. And let's start at the very beginning, Jon. In the beginning, Jon got into franchising. How? What was your start like?
Yeah, I totally got blindsided by it. Wasn't out there looking for it. Had spent many years in the corporate world, like many of your listeners, and had a good run. Could have kept doing that, but like so many, had that itch to do something else. And so I ended up going from a public company to a private company. That was kind of my sidestep into more entrepreneurial tendencies. And so I stepped in as president of Shelf Genie franchise system, which is just an outstanding franchise system, Inc. 500. Some rapid growth across North America, and had the opportunity day to day to support our owners all across North America from our home office. And for me, it was a pivotal experience to really open up my eyes to what I've now dubbed non-food franchising. Just seeing these paths to business ownership outside of traditional food franchising, and how it resonates with so many. So fast forward, partnered with the founder of Shelf Genie. We spun off. We've invested in franchises as franchisees of different businesses. I've had other partners as well. We've invested. So I've sat on both sides of the franchise table, and fortunately, we've got good people running the businesses for us, and allows me to spend probably 95% of my time helping others do the same.
Brilliant. So you're working both on the backstage, the back end, the corporate office, and you've also been on the front side owning your own franchises as well. Am I hearing you right?
Yeah, 100%. And, we're very blessed to actually do more placements of candidates into franchises than anybody else in the country. So we also get great visibility into the tip of the spear, what's going on the ground from Los Angeles to New York and a whole lot of towns in between, and, what's resonating, why is it resonating? So we kind of bring all that together and guiding our clients to the right opportunities.
Yo, are you interested in business ownership? For many entrepreneurs, the journey starts with non-food franchising. Franchising is simply the better option for many entrepreneurs, and demand is at an all-time high. Lucky for you, Jon Ostenson, founder of FranBridge Consulting, is here to help you today. Jon and his FranBridge Consulting team are part of the largest brokerage in the US and are constantly vetting the market thoroughly. FranBridge is hands down the premier source for the best opportunities in the non-food franchising world. They will find the best business for you, your personality, and your location. From healthcare to dumpsters, from youth soccer to oil changes, even insulation and windows. And the best part, it's 100% fee-free, no additional costs to you. You may have heard Jon on Entrepreneurs on Fire. He has served as an Inc. 500 franchisor, a multi-brand franchisee, and in fact, he's one of the top 1% consultants nationwide. Listen, sign up for a free consultation with the CEO, Jon, today, not his assistant, not his sales team. Sign up for free with Jon today at FranBridgeConsulting.com. That's FranBridgeConsulting.com. And guess what? He's even going to send you a copy of his book for free, Non-Food Franchising. For free book. You got to love it. So go to FranBridgeConsulting.com right now. All right, let's get into the episode. What was your biggest surprise in your first year of franchise ownership? When you've had your first franchise, you're like, oh, this is going to be easy peasy, lemon squeezy. What was your biggest surprise that first year, Jon?
Yeah, this sounds so cliche to say, but it's so true. When I was an owner or president of Shelf Chain Franchise System, I looked across who were our top franchisees. They were the ones that were following the system. And they didn't try to pretend to be the smartest guy in the room, but they came in and said, hey, there's a reason why I bought into a proven playbook. I'm going to essentially do what you tell me to, especially out of the gate, and then I'll kind of nuance off of that. And, so having had that experience as a franchisee, I've come in and, still we get tempted to try to go outside the lines and, maybe we take on work that, ultimately isn't the highest margin work, like a driveway company franchise that I own with some partners. We started doing a lot of new driveway pours. Well, the secret sauce of that business was repairing cracks and fixing potholes and resurfacing and all these smaller projects that aren't these huge $30,000 deals, but they were higher margin. And so, we tripped a few times. I won't pretend like we didn't, but end of the day, it comes down to following the system. And you still have to have a good person to put in place. I mean, if you're running the business as what we call executive model or semi-passive, putting that manager in place is key. And, I'd say on the flip side, a real positive was, that franchisor can really be your business partner. So, I'd say 2/3 of our clients either keep their day job or they're already focused on a business that they own and they're looking to get something going on the side. Probably 2/3 of ours are looking to, go with that model. And the great thing is, if it's a good franchisor, you can partner with them in supporting your day-to-day manager. So buck still stops with you as the owner. However, that franchisor is going to be a great technical resource that your manager can go to for questions and a lot of direction, taking some of the burden off of you.
I will say that the idea of having some back-end support is kind of appealing. It's a little bit appealing because I find time and time again, being an after-hours entrepreneur, building your own business, it can be very lonely. Not a lot of people you can talk to that are going to understand the day-to-day issues that you're going through. I mean, I had a pretty long discussion with my wife just the other day, because I had a big win, landed a big client, thousands of dollars. It was a good account. And my wife was just kind of like, oh, no big deal. I'm like, it's kind of a big deal. It's kind of a big deal. But, if you're starting it on your own, if you have a vision, sometimes it's hard to have other people buy into that vision. Do you find that that's a big support point when it comes to opening a franchise and having a group of community of other owners involved?
100%. Again, not to go too cliche on you, but you're starting on third base. I mean, you're buying into a model that's been proven out in other markets to be successful, or else it wouldn't be franchised and people buying in. Oftentimes if it's a traditional startup, you don't know if that business can become profitable. Your hypothesis is that it can, but in a franchise, it can be, and there's a path that you follow and execute on to that point of profitability. But no, I think you're exactly right, Mark. I mean, having that community, having other owners around the country, around North America that are living the same thing day in, day out. I mean, you guys are constantly exchanging best practices and ideas, and having that franchisor on the sidelines, it's almost like a coach, and the better you do, the better they do. You've got the proven playbook, but then, there's so many small benefits you don't really think about, like the ability to buy in bulk as a franchise system. That could be product, or it can be even services, like from a digital marketing firm. Essentially they're able to, get the bulk buying, pass along that discount. They also operate with larger data sets. And so if you were to launch, let's say in Albuquerque, some business, you're going to be starting from scratch as far as your Google ads and your social. But wouldn't it be nice to have a franchise system that not only runs those ads for you, taking that off your plate. But they also operate from a large data set where they've operated in other markets, and they can use that information to optimize your campaign. So, there are little nuances like that, but I think the one that you hit on, the community is huge. You're in business for yourself, not by yourself, with a good franchise system.
I like that, in business by yourself or for yourself, but not by yourself. That makes a lot of sense. You talked about a few other advantages of having a franchise, starting with franchise, in that you've got the incorporated systems already in place. You've already got the branding. You've got some economies of scale as you can kind of split in on the supply of items. You had mentioned, I was listening to you on another show, and you had mentioned that one of the franchises, the big companies, had a deal with Home Depot. So Home Depot was just funneling leads to the business owner, the local franchise business owner. Can you tell me about that? Like, is that something that we can expect? Because finding leads, finding clients, that can be tough for a new business owner. But if you have the right franchise, is it true that they're just going to keep pouring through the doors? What's up with that?
Yeah, it totally depends on the franchise system. Some are set up where they can have, where they've got the geography representation across the country, for instance, where they have been able to approach national accounts and build those relationships. Others, aren't there yet. I mean, some of our clients are buying into, opportunities where there's only a handful of franchisees. Well, they've got to wait till they have that critical mass to then land the national accounts and have the coverage. But that can be a huge opportunity, is that, kind of more organic lead generation where, in some cases it's repeat business. I was talking with a client in Minneapolis this morning, and we were talking about an opportunity where, if he steps into it, he's already got about $200,000 in annual recurring revenue as part of a book of business that he's stepping into. And that's not always the case. I won't say that's the expectation, but that is definitely a nice to have, when that exists. And if nothing else, you've got case studies. I mean, you go in and, it may be an industry where brand recognition isn't as important, but you've got case studies. I think about an insulation company we work with. Well, insulation is very different than food, and food branding matters. And there are a lot of reasons why we don't do a lot in food, which I'm happy to get into. But insulation, that's a $53 billion a year industry, residential and commercial. I bet you couldn't name one brand in there. Most people couldn't, at least. And so you come in, you bring a white collar approach to a blue collar industry where you've got the marketing systems, you've got the call center on the back end, you've got the technology. I mean, the bar is pretty low in an industry like that to be able to come in and somewhat disrupt it.
Super interesting. Like it sounds to me like there's a lot of pros, there's a lot of benefits. I mean, you've got the system is the hard thing too, because, just building up my podcast agency from the ground up. I mean, lots of mistakes have been made. So we talked a lot about the pros, the benefits of going into the franchise system. What's one of the cons? What's one of the negatives? What's a reason why, a franchise might not be the best fit?
Yeah, great question. And I have to explain to some of my clients that, hey, this isn't going to be the right fit for you. I'm a member of EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, with chapters around the country. And I get a lot of EO members that approach me and say, hey, we want to, launch a franchise for this next season. And we've kind of been there, done that. We appreciate everything that a franchise brings to the table. Well, we do a lot of deals with EO members, which is, but some of them are too entrepreneurial. They get in and on the very first call, they say, well, why don't they do it this way? Why have they tried this? Why don't they do it like this? And it's like, wait a minute. You go off and start your own thing. You don't need a franchise system. In fact, you would probably be somewhat disruptive within a system. So I'd say some people are too entrepreneurial, because ultimately you've got to respect the brand. You've got to respect the process. Live between the lines. But that's what you want. And a good franchisor is still going to let you go test things or go. When I was at Shelf Genie, we found some of our best employees from a pool of talent, stay-at-home moms that we never would have expected. It were great designers. We also had our franchisees out testing different marketing vehicles in their respective areas, and then they'd bubble up best practices that we could all learn from. So a good franchisor is going to give you some leeway to test things. And then if they work, then you can incorporate that across the whole franchise system. You just can't go too far outside of bounds. And I think for some people, they're too entrepreneurial.
Yeah. Creative. I'm a creative type. It's hard to kind of put me into that box. But I think when I first started off, I was thinking the only reason I'm doing this, at the end of the day, when you start a business, it's to make money, it's to generate income, to give yourself that freedom. And I heard you mention this as well. The percentage chance of success is much higher in the franchise world as well. Because I think of myself as being an after-hours entrepreneur, building up that hustle on the side. Risk is a big part of that, because I got a family to feed. I got to put food on the table for my daughter, for my son, for my kids. I don't forget Yoda. I see you, boy. That's my little doggy. I see you, Yoda. So I know I got to keep you fed too. So removing the risk out of this equation seems like an important thing too, right?
Yeah.
What percentage of what's the contrast for me, John, the success rate of entrepreneurs versus franchise entrepreneurs?
Yeah, the data would show that, large data that after 5 years, 92% of franchises are still in business, whereas, probably a third or less of startups are. And so I think with franchising, and I look at different client case studies of mine, and some have been the franchising route all along. They'll buy a franchise, do very well. They got the manager in place. They move on to the next one. And, I think of my client, Nathan, in South Carolina, largest franchisee of 2 Minute Truck, 40 years old, operates in about 10 markets, $30 million a year business. Well, he comes to me every year and says, hey, what's the next thing I'm going to get involved in? And we look at a few opportunities. He picks one, runs with it, puts a young guy in place, and, says, hey, go make us proud. And in every case, he's come back and bought additional, locations within the first year. I mean, he's done very well. I think of another client of mine. I'll use South Carolina as an example too. Another client of mine who's a business owner. He's built up several businesses in the state of South Carolina, and he came to me and said, "Hey, for this next season, I want to get involved in franchising." And you do see that. We talk about seasons. Most of the time, this isn't going to be your forever thing. You're going to build this, get it going, get it in a good place. Let's build another one. So we have a lot of repeat clients. But this client, he bought into a dumpster business. Didn't have any experience in it. He bought it in Columbia. Since then, he's expanded to Charleston. Just came back last week, bought up the Greenville Spartanburg market. He said, I can't keep these things in stock. This is a great system. Again, there's competition out there, but they figured out a way as a franchise system to go in and really gain market share by doing some things differently. Oftentimes it's that white collar approach to blue collar industries that we see working so well.
So is that the common denominator? What's that common denominator when you see it, these people that they leave their day job, they leave that, we'll say risk-free, although it's definitely not risk-free staying in a job that doesn't drive you, doesn't fill your cup, but they're in a low-risk situation at the office, at their work. What's that common denominator? What's that thing that all these successful franchise business owners have to make it work?
So in our new book, Non-Food Franchising, the very first chapter, the first paragraph, I address that, and I explained that in our conversations on a daily basis across the country, I mean, there's this innate desire to be a business owner, to control your destiny, to build something, and not just work for the man and build his empire, but you want to build your own empire. I see this across all good people across the country. Some step out, some don't. Some kind of tiptoe to the edge of the diving board and then they back off. But so many of our clients come back to us and say, I'm so glad I made the decision that I did, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And so, they step out. And again, when you look at the odds, you can be fired in a corporate job. You can, if you buy a resale of an existing business, the key employees could leave the next day. Whenever you have change. But if you bring a new opportunity to your market that's been proven elsewhere and you follow the system, your odds are just stacked up in your favor. And, it's really an interesting time right now, Mark. We're seeing more interest than ever before. I think it's a combination of stock markets all over the place. Interest rates are high, only so many good real estate deals. And people are coming to us saying, hey, where else can I put my investable cash? And some of the things they like about business ownership, and especially through franchising, is you can build up that cash flow. You can build up an asset that's going to have exit value down the road, which we can certainly talk about, that piece. But you're also building a business where you get some tax write-offs that you don't as a W-2 employee. Each of my kids, they ship out my book for me. I pay them each $12,000 a year, which is, they're not taxed on that because it's under the threshold. I then have them roll it into a, Roth IRA because they have earned income. They can do that. So, it's setting up generational wealth and, just a lot of things that you can't do as a W-2 employee.
That those tax benefits, this stuff does not get talked about enough. That idea of I can pay my kids up to $12,000 a year and that's tax free. Talk to your accountant, by the way, but super, super solid tip. I just heard a couple of weeks ago. It's going to save me hundreds of thousands over the next coming decade. So I'm excited about that. Who would have thought having kids would have paid off? Who would have thought? So you brought up something. Okay. So let's say I'm considering this, and the franchise idea seems interesting, and I'm trying to sell my wife on it, on the idea I'm going to leave that job that I hate, which, by the way, to your point, John, that job that you have is not guaranteed tomorrow. We're seeing it all across America, middle management getting fired, because why pay Jim when I can have a robot do it more effectively for cheaper? Don't sleep on that. AI has changed everything. But What does my first year look like, Jon? I leave the job. I'm waking up on Monday. It's time for my franchise dream to come true. I'm going to open the door to my office, my shop. What does the first year look like for a young franchise owner?
Yeah, and I'll start by saying 1/3 of our clients, are making that jump. 2/3 are keeping their job or keeping their existing business. So it is a blend there. Yeah, and it's not a passive investment. Nothing's easy. It's going to take some sweat. But if you find a good manager to put in place, and we kind of help our clients with facets of that, we've got a great recruiting partner. It's very doable. And a great thing is you bring your spouse along, in the process. When we go through the top opportunities in your market and we present those to you, bring her along or him along. But really make it a partnership going through this, even if they're not going to have a big role in the business. And, you're going to get to talk to other franchise owners of that system during the process. You're going to talk to the founder of the business. We're going to cover a lot of steps to really get you as much information, feeling confident before making that decision. But, that first year, it's, from the time that you sign, it's really up to you to when you launch the business, but you're going to attend training with the franchisor. You can send your manager to train, let them be trained up. You can also, they're going to provide you with a checklist of here are all the activities that you're responsible for, here are the ones that we're responsible for, to really get that business ready to go day one, whether it be turning on marketing a few weeks ahead of time and setting everything up in the systems. It's a very thorough process. You're not left guessing. And that way you hit the ground running. And every business is different. I was sharing with a client yesterday, there's a business in the gutter space. We did 7 deals in the gutter space last year. We had everyone from doctors to attorneys to, insurance guys, former corporate executives buying into this business, gutter installs and such. It's about $6 billion industry. Anyway, they stepped in. The average franchisee, and these are good numbers. There's a reason why we did 7 of them. They're not all created this way, but a lot of them hit $1 million in the very first year. Their average revenue across the franchise system for those that have been open at least a couple of years is $1.7 million. But they've had multiple franchisees in the very first year. You get to 800,000, $1 million, 1.2. And so there can be that fast ramp up. Again, I'd say most are not quite that fast. But with some, again, and if you have national accounts or you just, the marketing is really strong, there's that opportunity in the industry. It is doable. And, they're doing those at very healthy margins, 25 to 30% bottom line. And with my clients, we always take a conservative approach to the pro forma and say, well, what if our experience, what if we only do half this well? Is there enough meat on the bone? And so we kind of look at it that way. But the great thing is you're not just building pro forma on the back of a napkin, stepping in, but you're actually getting real data, talking to real people that have been there, done that. And you get to see the numbers ahead of time.
I love this idea of it being cash flow positive that quickly. That's pretty nuts. You're talking about profitable business within the first year. Is that a realistic expectation, would you say? Obviously, yeah. I have an upfront expense, right? It's going to cost me. So let's get into the numbers a little bit. Yeah. How much is it going to cost me to get involved in, let's say, an average franchise? What's that range? Yeah.
So the one I just mentioned, you're probably around 200,000, 225 all in. I'd say while we're doing some $1 million deals, whether it be car washes or laundromats or, oil changes, most of them fall between 125 and 300,000, and that would be your franchise fee, startup costs, working capital. And so all that grouped together, you're kind of in that range with quite a few falling around 200,000. Some of our clients are using cash to fund it. Some are using cash plus an SBA loan. That's very common. Some are using a ROBS, which is your old 401k or IRA can be rolled over to purchase the business without the tax consequences. Some are using a HELOC. So a lot of different ways of going about it, but that's where we see most of them falling. It's kind of that 125 to 300 range.
Okay, so we're talking, 125, 300K to get it started. Let's talk a little bit about the cash flow. What does the cash flow look like at first? Am I just taking all that incoming profit and just dumping it right back into the business? Am I taking a little bit to my side? Am I paying my kids a little bit, up to 12K each? What does the cash flow look like in the first year for an average franchise?
Yeah, it's really up to you how you handle the cash flow piece. But from a P&L standpoint, I'd say a lot of the opportunities we work with, you're probably cash flow positive somewhere between 6 and 9 months. That would be cash flow positive on the P&L. Of course, you've got your payback period of paying off that initial $200,000, essentially, if you think about it that way. But again, with my clients, even though it's likely in the first 6 to 9 months, let's assume 12 months. Let's just go conservative in our thinking. And Mark, one important note here is while we're doing quite a few deals in what I call brick and mortar retail, we're doing even more in these remote type positions where, you've got a team. I mentioned the gutter business or the insulation business. Businesses like that, you don't need a physical location, at least not one that's customer facing where you have an expensive build out up front. That's why you're able to ramp up faster, get in a little bit, at a lower rate. And, I'll just hit on that real fast. I mean, the interest level we're seeing from all different types of backgrounds that have no experience in these industries has largely been towards businesses like property services and home services, things that I call boring businesses that are, cash flow positive, understandable, Amazon resistant, in some cases recession resistant or COVID resistant. It's these non-sexy businesses that are the new sexy, whether it be, concrete paving, dumpsters, I mentioned insulation, gutters, businesses like that. We're also seeing a lot of interest in health and wellness. I think fitness, there are a few concepts we like, but overall it's a little bit crowded right now, so we're not doing as much there. But we're still doing a lot of oil changes. And I'd say, we've all been talking about a recession, for the past decade. If that, it's the most anticipated recession that's ever going to come, I think, if it does come. And, most people are saying it's going to be pretty light. That's kind of what I'm hearing in back half of this year, pretty light. But people say, what business do I want to own during a time like that if the economy does go downhill? And I go back to, what are you going to continue to spend on personally? It's the things you care about, your kids, your pets, your aging parents. So I think businesses that support things like that, home, health, kids, pets, aging parents, are good categories to be in.
Well, I like the idea that I don't need a physical location because that real estate is incredibly expensive, especially down here in the South Florida area. What I'm thinking that you might be able to do is you can set up your we'll call it side hustle franchise from your home office. Right from your home, right? So then you're getting the tax benefits of writing off certain office expenses from your house. Am I hearing you correctly there?
Absolutely. And let's just say it's a business that has multiple vehicles. I mean, where are you going to park those? Your HOA may not like that. Oftentimes, I oftentimes go talk to a property manager for a retail shopping center in the area and, maybe rent a few parking spaces from them. And, I always say, hey, let's find someone that have great street visibility. Because if you've got a truck or a van out there that has the branding on it, then that's kind of like a billboard. It's some free advertising for you. And some people will use self-storage or some people do truly operate from their home. But most would operate, from an office standpoint, they're in their home or some variant of that. And again, we are doing some, certainly doing some deals in the retail space. It's just, I think ever since COVID, we've seen more of a trend towards these non-retail businesses.
Yeah. So the internet has changed everything. There's so many cool business models. There's this business model that Mr. Beast has that you may or may not be aware of. Mr. Beast, like pretty big YouTuber. He's got like 150 million subscribers, but he has this thing called the Mr. Beast Burger that you can order online through your app, and any restaurants in the local area that have the correct ingredients for the Mr. Beast Burger can basically register with the app to fulfill the order. So I can go on my phone, order Mr. Beast Burger, and I don't know, the Red Robin from around the corner will actually produce it, create it, and drop it off at my house. So it's kind of crazy, all these different integrations that we can have now. There's just so many opportunities to make money. And this idea of I can open up a franchise from my home that I can work with with my wife or my spouse in after hours time, build up a big asset. It's just really, really amazing. We talked about cash flow. We talked about tax write-offs. Talk to me about the big exit, baby. Talk to me about the big exit, John. What does it look like? I'm going to be putting blood, sweat, and tears into my business, into my franchise for years. What does that exit look like? What's that goal?
Yeah, first, I'd say private equity loves franchising. I get calls from several private equity firms every week asking me what I'm seeing out there on the landscape. Oftentimes they're investing at the franchisor level. I mean, there's so much activity right now, but sometimes they will invest at the franchisee level and roll up franchisees. But, I'd say you don't plan on that. Instead, you plan on, either selling to an adjacent franchisee, like with the driveway company. We bought out 2 other franchisees in the Atlanta area. So it kind of helped us expand our footprint, gave them exits. So very common to go that path. Also, the franchisor is going to have a list of everyone that's shown interest in the business in your area over the past couple of years. So you have kind of a natural lead list when you are ready to sell. But there was an interesting study that was done recently where they looked at 2,000 business transactions over a 10-year period, both franchised and non-franchised in like kind of industries. What they found was the franchise businesses traded at a multiple 1.5 times the non-franchised. And so, from a resale value standpoint, nothing's guaranteed, but when you look at a large data set, the resale value of a franchise business is seen in the eyes of that buyer. So, very, very common. And what's interesting, Mark, is a lot of our clients come to us and say, "Hey, we've been into this whole idea of entrepreneurship through acquisition." Yeah, that's very, very common right now. The challenge is they're not able to find a lot of good opportunities out there, because if they're good opportunities, people hang on to them, or they're charging too much, or there's some nuance and maybe the books aren't very clean, or they're bidding up against other people. And so ultimately, time and time again, I see this almost every day. Clients of ours have said, "Hey, we want to buy a business," come back to us and say, "Actually, I think the franchising path is going to be better for us."
The idea of having on average 1.5 times size exit is pretty appealing too. So many pros. Jon, I'd like to know, before we get into the rapid fire, the world famous After Hours Entrepreneur rapid fire section here, let us know, if we want to know more about this franchise opportunity, what it might look like for me and my family, what that future could look like, where's the best place to learn more, Jon?
Yeah, if you come out to our website, FranBridgeConsulting.com, that's FranBridgeConsulting.com. We've got plenty of information out there, but share your email address, sign up for our monthly newsletter. We put out great content, and we'll be sure to, I'll have my assistant reach out and share a digital copy of our new book, Non-Food Franchising, both the audio version as well as the PDF version. And if you go on Amazon, you can also purchase the book. All profits go to a great charity that we support. So definitely don't hesitate to do that either. But no, and when my assistant reaches out to share the book with you, if there's interest in taking another step and actually getting on a call, I'd be more than happy to talk with any of your listeners, Mark, and kind of talk about what next steps would look like. It's entirely free to work with us. We're funded by the franchise brands, very similar to an executive search type model. We work with over 600 different companies out there, part of the largest brokerage system in the U.S. And so more than happy to engage and help where we can.
Oh, wow. So you can actually walk me through the entire process. I'm not necessarily paying you directly. I'm not paying you whatever 10% of the franchise finder's fee, right?
If you go directly to the brand or you go through us, you pay the same franchise fee. So nothing trickles down. So, because I do more deals than anyone else, I'm able to also negotiate on your behalf with those franchisors. And so what it would look like would be, we've created a really refined process. We'd get to know each other. I'd share some information and collect a little bit from you, and then come back to you about a week later with what I see as the top 9 or 10 opportunities in your market. I take you through those, and from there, you typically pick 3 or 4. We make the introductions, and then we kind of hold your hand through the process of exploring the franchise. So, we've seen it work just for so many clients over time, and would love to help some of your listeners too.
Super cool. How long is that process from the date that I make the first call, I sign up for the first meeting with Jon to look at the franchising? What's the turnaround time from me signing up for that first call and actually signing the contract, having my own franchise?
Yeah, probably somewhere 2 to 3 months. I'd say, maybe a little closer to 3 months. Just depends. Sometimes they go through really fast, but I'd say 2 to 3 months on average. And from there, it's not that you're launching the business the next day, but you're working with the franchisor on when the right time is to then launch the business. We have some clients that'll wait 6 to 9 months, but most would launch, I'd say, probably 3 or 4 months after that.
Pretty cool. 90 days, I can have my own business in a box. It sounds pretty interesting to me. I'm liking it. You might have sold me on this one, Jon. I appreciate you joining the show and just kind of sharing your backstage pass to how this industry works. It's very fascinating. Very fascinating. And again, if I could highlight that one stat, 92% success rate for people that start their franchise. That's a pretty big number, Jon. 92%. I like that number. Okay, cool. Rapid fire. Are you ready? Are you buckled up? Are you ready to roll?
Let's do it.
Let's go. Fire it up. Jon, what is the most terrifying movie you've ever seen?
I'd have to go back to Jaws. It's an oldie but goodie. That's what comes to mind immediately.
It is a good one. Terrifying. Jon, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live?
We love Atlanta, Georgia, where we are. We've got friends and family, great community here. But I've always loved Europe, and we love to visit over there. Love to have a place in Switzerland someday as well that we can hop over to.
Brilliant. Artificial intelligence, overrated or underrated?
It's fascinating. Yesterday on LinkedIn, I posted a poem about my book, Non-Food Franchising. I said, write a poem about non-food franchising in ChatGPT. Spit it out. I posted it, had great feedback. So I'm only at the tip of the spear there, but it's pretty fascinating. So I think I'm most excited about what it's going to be able to do on the health and wellness side. I'm really into the longevity movement and a lot of the hacks around that. So that's where I'm most curious.
Brilliant. It is amazing what it can do. Super fascinating. If you could sit next to anyone on a plane, who would you sit next to?
Regardless of political beliefs, I'd say, a couple of our past presidents. Just they know so much more than they can ever tell us publicly. But I'd try to get some information out of them and ask them about some big decisions they made. So I won't say which one. I don't want to offend anybody, but would love to get some feedback from multiple sources. Okay,
the big seat. I'll take that. What was the best book you read in 2022?
It's not rocket science, but Die with Zero. And it really got me thinking, unlike other books have recently. And it's written by an oil trader out of Houston, but it's the whole idea that you're only going to be at a certain age with certain health for so long, and your kids are only going to be at a certain stage for so long. And it's all about maximizing that time and kind of starting with the end in mind and realizing you can't take it with you. And so I think it was just healthy for me. I think a lot of us get on the, run the rat race and never stop and spend enough time looking around and saying, let's enjoy the moment instead of just living for the future. So it was healthy in my way of thinking around that.
Perspective. That idea of look at yourself in 10 years. What is that person doing? What does a day look like for that person? And to your point, it's easy to get caught up in that hamster wheel, baby. That hamster wheel, there's always something rolling, There's definitely been times where I said, I can't do that today. I'm too busy. But the reality is every day is going to be too busy. There's never a day where we're not busy,
There was a great article in Forbes recently about, it's never the right time to start a business. You will always find a reason why not to, but you'll be so thankful that in the future, looking back, that you did.
100. I have friends to this day that I talked about years ago. They were going to start this. They had this grandiose plan. They wouldn't start it. It was never the right time. Yeah. It was never the right time. Final question here for you, Jon. If you had 10 seconds with yourself 10 years ago, what would you say?
Great question. I think it would be, hearkening back to the book I just shared, it'd be live in the moment, enjoy every moment. And I think I do a pretty good job. We travel a lot, spend a lot of time with the kids. But I think when you think about your life in hindsight, they say you always wish you'd spent more time, on the things that mattered. And maybe I spent a little too much on the business side. So I'd say it comes back to balance.
Balance it out, baby. Yeah. Jon Ostenson, thanks for joining the After Hours Entrepreneur Day, baby.
Mark, loved it. Appreciate it.
Boom, mic drop. Wow. So many great points here that were shared today. And I think a lot of maybe myths, things that I had in my head about franchising got debunked. That 92% success rate is a big deal because starting your own business incurs a lot of risk. So if you can minimize that risk by taking on a proven system, that seems like a win to me. Listen, thanks for checking out today's show. I hope you learned something as far as action items go. Go out and, that thing you've been putting it off. This is the week. This is the week to do it. That thing you've been putting off that you need to do. This is the week to make it happen. So go take the action. And I'll catch you here next time on After Hours Entrepreneur. See ya. Peace.